Hello and welcome to the Marina Skua Podcast. My name's Marina, I'm a knitwear designer and yarn and fibre dyer, and I also do lots of fibrey, yarny, crafty things. So this video is going to be about things I'm working on at the moment. It might be a slightly short one because I'm in between lots of stuff. I've got lots of plans in the works and I've got a few ongoing projects. But yeah, we'll see how we go. So to start off with, I'm wearing my Welana cardigan, which is a design that was originally published in Making Stories magazine and is now available individually on my website and Ravelry. We've got big sleeves with these swoopy cables, which I love. I enjoy a bit of sleeve drama, and you know, they're not the best for doing the washing up, but for most other things they're great. You can stash things in there and it's fun. We've got the same cable design down the centre of the back, and a reasonably deep V-neck. So yes, I do have a pattern sale on at the moment in my on my website and in my Ravelry store. There's no code needed. You can just get 25% off all my patterns while it's summertime. So that is running until the 15th of August, which is next Friday. So if you are watching this video relatively soon, you can avail yourself of that if you are keen for any of my patterns. It might be a nice chance to plan some things you're going to be making in the autumn, or cast on some later summer knits. And on the knitting front, I have a single project to show you. This one, if you've been watching for a while, you will have seen before. It is a cardigan in this amazing deep red Rauma yarn. So this is Rauma Finnelgarn, and I've finally actually started working on the sleeves. So the sleeves are going to have, they've got this panel of moss stitch down the top, and that is going to do some twisty intersecty stuff along the top of the sleeve because I like an interesting detail along the top of a sleeve. I am working my sleeves 2 at a time because I love to. I can't bring myself to do the same thing twice in a row. I don't enjoy it, and so I've got 2 balls of yarn attached here. Gonna have to join on another one for one sleeve quite soon. And one of the things that's actually made quite a difference, which I feel like I'm a bit late to the game on, is I use interchangeable needles pretty much all the time. And I have a couple of these swivelly cables. These ones in particular are the Mindful ones by Knit Pro, which I get from No Frills Knitting in Bristol because I love them. And when I was on the lookout for some decently pointy metal needles, Meg was super helpful in sending me photos to compare like the different tip profiles of the different ranges of needles they had. And these Mindful ones ended up being decently nice and pointy, so I really like them for cables and things because I cable without a cable needle. Also for things like make 1 increases where you're picking things up from the back of the loop and stuff like that. So these are 3.25 millimeters, which for me gives a good gauge on this yarn. And also on the Knit Pro thing, I've probably mentioned this before. I had quite a few pairs of Symphony needles, which I stopped buying because they break. That's not necessarily the fault of the needle. I am a brute and just snap wooden needles quite easily. So I gradually started switching over to metal ones, and then I moved over to a couple of pairs of Zings, but I found them really, really blunt, which can be quite nice if you're working with quite a splitty yarn or something. But I've always found, especially on the cables, the quality on Knit Pro hasn't necessarily been great. But with these mindful ones, they seem to be made to a better standard than a lot of their other lines. So that's something I'm really enjoying, and I'm probably going to invest in a few more of the cables. And then as I need them, I've been replacing some of my, not necessarily replacing, I keep both, but adding to my collection of metal ones. If I'm doing a project with lots of cables in a size that I only have wooden ones, then I've been replacing with these mindful ones because I'm really enjoying them. So yes, on this one, I'm hoping to finish it relatively soon because I saw something possibly on Instagram the other day that reminded me that I started this probably over 2 years ago, which is not great. Like, for a project that I am really excited about, it's just been sidelined so many times so I can work on other projects. And so now I am focusing on that, and I'm not allowing myself to cast on other things until I finish it. I only have 2 other background works in progress, one of which has been on the needles for much longer. It's more like 4 years. But that one's a scrappy project. I'm not necessarily in a big hurry to finish it. And one of them is a crochet project that is the tiniest project, but it's in the naughty corner. And so I need to get over myself and go back to it and just do some actual counting. But yes, I'm excited to plan some upcoming knitting projects. I have finished a design sample, which is upstairs, but I can't show you because it's for a publication. I'm excited to get that one out the way. That was in big chunky yarn, and so doing some finer knitting is really enjoyable at the moment. And then once that one is finished, I think I'm going to do a little video for my Patreon where I go through my yarn stash, which my personal stash of yarn is reasonably modest. Like, I have a couple of boxes of yarn that I don't have many jumper quantities or like big garment quantities. I have lots of individual skeins of things that, you know, people have sent me to try out or as gifts, or, you know, samples of things, or things that I've bought and then not used yet. And so I think I'm going to do a run through of, not all of, but some of my stash yarn, and just pick out a few things that I want to allocate projects to, because I was getting out some yarn for something I'm about to show you. And there were lots of things in there that it's like, yeah, I'd really like to use that soon. So I think for my autumn crafting, I think I'd like to make more versions of a couple of my existing designs. But then I do have queued up for this autumn and the first half of winter, like quite a lot of pattern releases of things that have been released in publications, mostly like last year, that I'm now going to release as individual patterns that you'll be able to get. And so I want to sort of clear the decks with some of those and release those patterns out before starting churning out some more designs. Churning out sounds mercenary, but it can be a thing where you get overwhelmed with ideas and it's really hard to try and prioritize which ones you want to work on. At the moment, I'm just feeling like using up my stash. I'm excited about it. I'd like to reduce some of that a little bit, just by using it in projects. And I think quite a lot of things will make their way into weaving as well as knitting projects, because I think weaving can be a really nice way of combining different yarns. And then I can make sort of either blankets or cloth. And so that is one of the things I'm going to be working on quite soon. It's something I've been putting off for a few weeks, probably more than a few weeks now. I like to weave with this yarn. So these cones, I actually have 2 more of these. It's really hard because I know that some of the cones are from a different batch, but they're not marked in any way. And I've had this yarn for years. It's a natural grey lamb's wool single. It's British wool, but not any particular breed. And I have woven with it before. It weaves up really nicely. So I would like to use this for some cloth. And this is the same yarn which I dyed a few years ago with coreopsis flowers from my garden. And then I believe I must have modified it with iron to get this darker brown colour. I think it's not a particularly pleasant brown. I quite like warm, comforting browns, whereas this is a very slightly greeny brown. But I think combined with this grey, so if I use the grey for warp and then this for weft, I think that could be really nice. In my head when I was planning this project, I had a lot more of this yarn. I had like a couple of 100 grams rather than about 80 grams. So I might end up doing some weft stripes with it. I'd like to do a herringbone. And it is going to be sort of a tester for larger, like more meterage of cloth, just to check the setup of my loom, because I'm still very new to my loom. I've only woven one thing on it. I've done a lot of rigid heddle loom weaving before, but getting used to a big loom. And so I need to do some tasks to make that possible. So I've bought some more heddles because the person who had the loom previously, I don't know if it originally would have had string heddles or metal heddles, but they have at some point been replaced with textile ones. These are more textile heddles because the person who had the loom previously was a tapestry weaver. Is a tapestry weaver. And so I think she doesn't tend to weave very, very fine cloth, so didn't have need of lots of heddles on the loom to get that nice dense fabric. So I'm going to add more. It's possible that I'm going to need even more for some of the cloth I have lined up in my mind. But that's going to be a fiddly job, and I'm not looking forward to it. Even though it shouldn't actually take that long, it's just one of those things I'm putting off. And another task is my rigid heddle loom, if you turn it over, acts as a warping board with these pegs. So you can put the pegs in and use that as a warping board. But they don't fit well. This is the Kronsky Harp Forte 24-inch loom. I have wound one warp on it, because obviously when I was using the rigid heddle loom, not necessarily obviously if you're not a weaver, I was direct warping onto a peg, so setting up the loom on the other side of the room to a peg and then walking back and forth. With a warping board, you just wind back and forth on pegs. And so these pegs don't fit very well in the holes. I did try hammering them in, but even so, they wouldn't go in very far. And gradually, as I was winding the warp, the pegs would sort of lean inwards as I was going. And because this wood is quite smooth, the yarn then started pinging off the top, and that was completely maddening. So I have read that apparently sanding down the pegs a little bit, especially at one end, so I think narrowing this end a tiny bit so it'll go better into the holes in the warping board, and then taking off some of the smoothness of the surface will hopefully help both with the pegs slanting and with the slippage. So another task I have to do, I think I can probably get about 5 meters of warp from that warping board, and so at the moment I'm not planning longer than 5 meters of warp. And eventually I might need a bigger warping board, but we'll get there. I am very excited about weaving plans at the moment. I would like to do more sewing, but because I really like sort of knowing where my fibres have come from, and also like trying to focus on reducing textile exploitation. There's a lot of it in the industry. It's a reasonably terrible industry if you look at it in terms of fast fashion. And so, you can take the garment worker stuff out of it by sewing your own clothes, but it's still very hard to get transparency on the fabric that you're buying. Some companies are obviously better than others. There are some really good ones. But I just kind of like the idea of taking on as much of that labour myself and knowing as much about my fibres as I possibly can. And that really helps me with reducing consumption, because I love crafting. I love making things with my hands. And I don't want to just constantly be churning out like knitting project after knitting project or sewing project after sewing project and have just too many things. And luckily, being obsessed with process, I'm looking at all the stuff I've got down here, which I am going to show you, means that the same bit of fibre, the same amount of material, yields so much more crafting time than if I just buy more yarn. So for me, I'm really enjoying that very slow, obsessing over process thing. So yeah, I've got a couple more future weaving projects here. This one, I've shown a few times recently, but it has reached a new stage. We've still got some raw fibre here. This is flax tow, onion dyed fleece, and rhubarb root dyed fleece. These are, the flax is from Flaxland, the fleece is from Fernhill Fibre, so both southwest of England producers, and then the dyes are ones I grew in the garden at my old house. These need to be blended up for warp. I have already blended up the fibres for the weft yarn, which are the same fibres but very slightly different colours. So there's some woad dyed wool in here as well, but dyed with the woad leaves on a stovetop, as you would for most natural dyes, rather than in a vat as you traditionally would with woad to get blue colours. So I've got lots of these bats, which are super fun. They've got loads of mad texture to them. And you can see the making of these in my most recent video. Sorry for the crinkling. I have to keep lots of stuff in plastic because just protecting my stuff. I've got a lot of wool in a very small amount of space and I need to keep a handle on it. So yes, I made those bats in a previous video showing the process of how I blend up quite different fibres. So the wool and the flax have very different properties, and showing how I combine those to make the bats, which will then be spun into yarn, which I am thinking, I was planning on spinning it as a 2-ply, as I usually do, and just going as fine as I can. I'm now considering leaving the yarn as a single. That will rely on me ensuring that my singles are really strong. But traditionally, when before pre-industrial revolution, most weaving yarns were singles. These days people tend to think that you shouldn't really use singles because they can be weaker, which is definitely true. But plying your yarn doubles the amount of time it takes to make a yarn of the same thickness as a single, because you're doubling it back on itself. And so if I do it as a single, it'll all go much faster. And so hopefully weaving very fine yarn will give me more area of cloth and give me a finer fabric overall. It would be really nice to be able to weave a fabric that feels like it's It's going to be a slubby, rustic fabric, but it would be nice to have something that has a handle and a weight that isn't like, yup, I've woven more very heavy tweed. I would like to get to the point where I can weave finer cloth. We'll see how that goes. It's all very time intensive and I do get bored of spinning. But by potentially halving the amount of spinning time I take, it could be very interesting. So I'm considering doing it as a single, but we shall see where I land on that. Yeah, and then on the spinning front again, this project has been going on a long time. This is, so I'll do it quite quickly. I've finished my first skein of my green feather blend. This is going to be the warp that I will use with this as the weft. I would like to do a herringbone with them. I think that would be very nice. I love herringbone. I've not woven a herringbone before. I think it'll be great. And so yes, I'm just nearing the end of the next bobbin of singles for more of this yarn, because I've still got quite a lot of fluff left to spin. And again, it's taking quite a while. I'm spinning not literally as fine as I can. Like I could go finer, but I wouldn't remotely enjoy it. So I'm spinning as fine as I can without it being horribly tedious. And so when I was plying this, like I did think, like I designed this blend. It's Wensleydale Teeswater, Shetland and Blueface Leicester. So there are some long lustrous fibres in there that make it ideal for spinning really fine. So this is the feather blend. This one is Skua blend, which is more sort of lofty and slightly rustic and a bit wild. I was really hoping that, so this I've got, I think, about 570 meters per 100 grams. And so I was really hoping with this one that it was going to be over 600 meters per 100 grams. And in my head, I decided that this was a 100 gram skein. And then I measured it and it was 530 meters. And I was like, now I guess it's a denser blend, and so the fibres are more compact, and so maybe that would make it weigh more for how relatively fine it feels. But fine. Okay, so technically this yarn is heavier than this yarn. Last night I was just doing some calculations for how much I can fit on my bobbins and things, and thought about this, and thought to actually measure the skein. And I think it was 85 grams, which means that it's actually like 625 meters per 100 grams, which is much more in line with what I was thinking it was. And so that was pleasing. I have actually spun quite a nice fun yarn here. This is a 2-ply, and I'm really pleased with it. I think it's going to be reasonably nice and strong. And it does have quite a lot of plying twist in it. Actually, looking at this bit that's springing on itself a bit, that's actually the very end of the yarn that's tied around the skein. And I always tend to put a little bit of extra twist in the very end of the yarn, like where it goes onto the bobbin. And so the rest of it is reasonably balanced, and I'm hoping I've got enough twist in it for it to be nice and strong on the loom. I'm planning on not sizing it. So sizing is something you apply to the yarn to help it run through the loom without getting snagged and caught on itself, and it sort of reduces friction. You can use homemade sizing, so you can soak the yarn in, like some people use flour and water, but I think it depends on what you make the yarn out of. I've never done sizing before because, again, on a rigid head loom I haven't really needed it. With this one we shall see. I'm going to put it on the loom without sizing it, and if it ends up being tricksy I shall probably attempt to put some hairspray on it, which can apparently help control some of the fuzz, because there is a reasonable amount of fuzz to this. So yes, that is that project. Again, I've got almost a whole bobbin, then I will need to spin another bobbin, then I will need to ply that, and then I will need to spin 2 more bobbins and ply those. And then this will be yet another weaving project. I imagine this one will be woven before the naturally dyed flax and wool blend, because this one is just much further ahead. And so with projects like this, using commercial yarn, it's sort of a way to test things out on the loom and get used to the loom a bit with slightly lower risk before using some rather precious hand-spun yarn. So yeah, I think those are my crafting plans for like right now. And as I said, I do want to cast on some more knitting. I would like to decide on possibly a couple of different projects to get excited about to help me through those sleeves, because, you know, I think this is like an afternoon's work. And again, I kept getting distracted and doing other things because I'm like that. There is a reason I have lots of different crafts on the go all the time. But usually I tend to have I like to max out at 5 knitting projects. And I've got 3 at the moment. Well, no, one's technically a crochet project. So I have 2 knitting projects. And I've got space for a couple more. I would like to make some more things. So I will be going through my stash in a video for Patreon, probably in a couple of weeks' time. And I think that'll be really fun because I enjoy things like that, just remembering what I've got and planning things and deciding things that can go together and coordinating them. So I think that'll be exciting because it feels like a long time since I've actually planned a new knitting project, apart from the design I've just sort of finished. So in the next episode, I will be showing you the patterns from my West Country collection, which I released last winter, and those are finally going to be released as individual patterns. So I'll do a very quick run through of the designs, and possibly a look at some of the other things I've got coming out over the next few months, because there are lots of really exciting things there, and like, yeah, stuff that, because I haven't paid attention to it for a long time, because for the summer I've just kind of ignored it. It's like no one wants cozy DK weight colourwork mittens right now. So there are a few things that I will be showing off that will be available for purchase at that point. And I will mention, because one of my tiers on Patreon, the £10 tier, it comes with discounts for both my website. You get 20% off my website and 60% off my patterns, which is lots. For some of them, like, you end up paying almost nothing. And you get like Zoom calls and bonus videos, and there's a Discord channel and loads of great things. With the Fox tier, you also get any patterns I release while you are a patron as a free download, like rather than having to use your discount for it. The discount applies to all the back catalogue, but any patterns that are new releases, you will get as a download. So this autumn will be a very good time to be in that tier, because you will suddenly have the potential to add lots of things to your knitting queue for no cost. And also, like, I love my little community on Patreon. It's really nice. The support there feels so valuable. And it's just a really nice place to hang out with mostly like-minded makers. And yeah. On Patreon. I'm scatty today, sorry. For the rest of August, there is a little special offer where if you use the code SUMMER when you sign up, you can get 50% off your first month of joining, just as a little welcome bonus. So yeah, I don't know if I talk about Patreon enough. I love having people there, and it's great, and it's one of the few things that feels actually stable in what is otherwise quite a hectic way to work. And I thoroughly enjoy chatting with everyone there. So yeah, I think that is all for now. Hopefully next time I will have more progress on things, but it might be that as my attention gets further divided, there is incrementally less progress on each thing. But I will at least have lots of designs to show you and things to be excited about in terms of new releases and things. So it's been lovely to catch up this time, and I shall catch you then. Bye bye.